Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Noni Davis of Sya Academy. I am a legacy owner uh, of this African Center School. I inherited from my parents, Sylvia Davis, and my father, the late William Edward Davis, who were both educators. Well, my dad was, very actively involved in education, but my mother is a educator by profession. And so the last few weeks, I've been focused on the history of the Underground Railroad um, uh, in my hometown of Virginia. My mother's from the Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, Hampton Roads area. And a couple weeks ago, we were there, and so I had an opportunity to do some research while I was there. And then last week, I started with the history of North Carolina. And while I did know that there was an active, community of people who were involved in the Underground Railroad, I'm always amazed at how much more information there is and how little of it is presented in the historical text. I teach North Carolina history, I teach civics and econ, I teach American history 1 and 2, and geography. And it's just not the depth in-depth information is not there. And a lot of times our information is presented as a side a little picture on the side of the paper, like, oh, and by the way, here is this person like Omari bin Said, who was an African who escaped from South Carolina and ended up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And he was a teacher in Senegal. He was kidnapped when he was around 40. He was a teacher, and he there of the Quran, which meant he probably studied, or in his family was probably a well-educated family in Senegal and Gambia area, and he was enslaved. He went through the Middle Passage, or the Ma'afa, and ended up here. And he, like many other Africans, through their slave narratives, indicated that they were educators. Educators. And so when we're thinking of education in this country, we and the Freedmen's Bureau and all of those things, we must really understand that uh, that was education was something that was highly valued in our community. And so I'm continuing to try to build on that legacy here today. And so one of the things that I learned about that I want to introduce today was the two particular areas, Roanoke uh, Rapids area, which is a waterway area, which is continuing on the legacy of North Carolina, and the ports, the coastal region. But there's also there was another trek that was from Greensboro that ended up through Ohio and in Indiana, excuse me, which were by land. And so I was like, oh, okay, so let's do a little bit of both of those. And so to begin with the Roanoke, uh, the Halifax County, that area is between Rocky Mount and Emporia. And so when I'm taking my mother home to visit her family, we usually go up through just before you get to South Hill. We make this right turn off into 58 into Emporia. And when you get to Emporia, you see the Rocky Mount exit. If you go to the right, I think it's 95, it'll take you to Rocky Mount. So apparently this was a big hub of um, Africans escaping through that area. And so it's right here on the map. I'm going to just open this up for you real fast and show you Halifax County. If you can see Halifax Underground Railroad, and here's Rocky Mount, there's Durham, and there's Roanoke Rapids up there. And so it's a whole thing area where um the Africans were escaping. And also, they have quite a few stories. Here's another escape um, which is they have historical sites. They have that have been identified about the Underground Railroad passage through this area. And then I also found that they had, this is another map which shows you the Roanoke Rapids, Freedmen's Colony up there, and then you have Guilford County. And so we have all of these areas, and then finally have a picture here of the Roanoke Rapids, which is showing the Black community. It's really interesting because, a lot of times we get the narrative that Africans were like, you had maybe one or two people trying to escape, and da da da, and most of us were so happy on plantation and da da da. But the more you investigate, you find out that there was a lot of strategy, a lot of Mission Impossible kind of stuff going on. And the Black community who was enslaved, the Black community that was free, and white anti-slavery folks had a whole thing going here, and they were helping people to run away. And they were, yeah, I may be enslaved here, but I know how I'm gonna lay down these messages, and all kinds of, like I said, Mission Impossible. I mean, people need to really write a movie or a documentary about how intense this thing was. It wasn't a passive resistance at all. It was like seriously undercover. And so what I found out, there was a story, and in one of the pictures that I just showed you, of this man named James William, who was in 1838. He shared his story of how he escaped through Halifax from the Rocky Mount area to Virginia by crossing the Roanoke River. And so Africans were just finding ways to escape to the edge of these embankments, and they were determined that they were going to find watercraft, or someone would pick them up on a barge or canoeing. People have created these rafts and would tell them which way to go, and feed them and provide them food and housing all along the way. And then a lot of these were black people, free and unfree, who were determined to support these people, and whole communities of Black people were involved in this effort. And so, so that was the one that I just wanted to share about the Roanoke. But the history here of Halifax was intriguing, because this was an actual coalition, like I was saying earlier, between Quakers, the Cotton Levi Coffin and his brother. I can't remember his brother's name, but it's in here somewhere. Addison, at Levi and Addison Cotton Coffin, and down here in Greensboro, and all of these, the Quaker community had um, um, buildings or homes from Greensboro all the way up through Indiana. And they had enslaved Africans and free Africans who were conductors and who were spies, who were setting all of these, who were responsible for creating all of these codes and everything along the route. This was a 500-mile underground railroad. I was like, what in the world? That started in Greensboro behind Guilford College. And it started, they believe it. I mean, okay, so it started in 1819. And some of it was in response to a freed African. What was his name? His name was Johnny. No, 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 no. In 1817, there was a gentleman named, freed African man named Benjamin Benson, and he was enslaved in Guilford County. But records show that Benson was kidnapped from Delaware. So he was a freed African in Delaware. He was captured and brought down to Greensboro. And apparently, his case, he was trying to fight for his freedom. And the Quaker community and the freed African American community rallied around him to get him freed. And so he eventually won his case, but apparently it galvanized the community there to like, wait, we don't have to. This is unacceptable. You're not gonna get these freed people and then re-enslave them and think you're gonna do it in Guilford County. No. And so a second person, his name was John Demery, was another freedman who had moved to New Garden, and apparently he had been freed by his owner at the time. But when his owner, and he gave him his manumission papers, but when his owner died, the sons of this owner decided they were going to go to Guilford County and retrieve him, and it turned into a big fight. The he asked his daughter. He had moved to New Garden with his daughter and his wife. And when these young men came to get him or collect him, he told his daughter, "Go over and tell the coffins that this people are here." And they said within a few hours they had managed to help him to be released. I think they untied him; he was tied up or something like that. They distracted these young men, these two white guys who wanted to re-enslave him, and gave him enough time to escape and run away. And so, and apparently he was one of the first people, this guy, John Demery, was one of the first people to use that 500-mile trek from Ohio to, from Guilford County to Ohio, and then, eventually in Indiana. And so the Kahawa, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is Kahawha. And the Kahawa Trace Bill, the road or way bill began in Guilford County and extended 500 miles to Ohio and Indiana. And it was created by the Quakers, and then the African American community that lived there, which included the Monrovians or Brethren, the Friends or the Quakers, and the German Baptist Brethren, or they called them also the Dunkers. And so, according to the Library Guilford.edu website, the Quakers in North Carolina were the most active abolitionist group in North Carolina. And they were led by this Levi and Addison group. And the earliest documented journey is that of the young man I was just telling you about, John Demery, who was aided. He was the first person that would use this trail to get free, and that was 1819. And mind you, it went all the way to 1860, and nobody without being discovered. Um, let's see. So the the story, there's another story, and that one is of Arch and Vina Curry. Now, what happened with Arch and Vina? Arch was a freedman who also had his manumission papers, but apparently he became very ill and died. And his wife Vina was a housekeeper or a maid or something like that. But she kept his manumission papers, and so and hid them. So, but decided that she was going to join this Underground Railroad mission, and anyone that fit the description of her husband, because you remember this, they didn't have photos necessarily. This was manumission 1890s or whatever, 1819. I'm sorry, 1820s. So everything was written out. A description of these men. She would allow these African men to use his manumission papers, even though he was dead, and travel all the way to Indiana. And once they arrived in Indiana, they would mail or send these papers back. And they said there's no telling how many people she was able to help escape who fit the description of her husband, using the manumission papers of her deceased spouse. I thought that was amazing to hear. So, I mean, people were coming up with all of these ideas. Um, Another thing that I thought was interesting is uh, up upon their arrival to Free State, that's what they would do. Okay, so the Kanawha Path was a maze of secret codes and landmarks, and so some of the ways that they marked the pathway to Ohio was to take nails, and they would hammer nails into trees. Uh, they would lay stones at particular places. They would put nails in fences, and these nails were these objects or nails or whatever would indicate if it was sticking in this side of the tree, that was the pathway. If it was sticking in this side of the tree, it was that way. And I mean, and if there was a fork in the road, or some kind of people could get lost, they could find these trees, and even at nightfall or rain, they could just feel the tree and feel the where's the obstruction of the nail, right? The stones were used, and they were very specific, like I spoke about last week, is that they always use objects that would not seem out of place. They tried their best to do things that were like the women were in petticoats, but if I'm showing my green one, that means I need to go by land. If I'm showing the one with blue, that means that I need to go by water. And if I had one that was a gold color, I need to catch the stagecoach. So they were constantly, petticoats was not a big deal, so but the colors were symbolizing, or secret codes for different things. And like I think that I said, black means, if you saw black eyed peas on the um, mm, boardwalk or down at the harbor, you knew there were so many people watching, and so you had to be careful. But these conductors and folks who were, spies, were constantly, they say, having to make sure they kept the coding there up uh, um, up to date. So they had to continuously go back out to these spaces and set up, redo these codes or whatever. This, where does that nail? Make sure the nail is at the right height. Make sure the nail hadn't fallen out the tree. Make sure the stones were still in the right place, and then one of the other things they said, the that the reason why they were able to do this for so long, for like almost 41 years, right? 41 years of top secret, is that the only person who knew the code or knew what to look for would be the people who were traveling. They said they didn't tell the conductors. You wouldn't necessarily be only the directors. I'm trying to think, who is it that knew it? Uh, they were Conductors had to always keep the roads marked. Um, I don't know. There was another name for these people who were involved in the landmarks, but it was so they had to keep the information so tight that the only time you got that information was when you were actually on the path. So, and it could change daily. So that way they didn't, if anybody was caught, that it was hard for them to track what the information was, what were the passwords, what were the signs to look for, because it changed all the time. And so, like I said, they would have changed the location, which trees they were using, which rocks they were using, and just constantly modifying. And it just shows such a high level of intelligence. Like we're supposed to be surprised at that. Yeah. But when you keep the information out of the books and try to distort this idea like we have right now, I mean, Kamala Harris is running and they're saying that she's stupid. They're saying that she's a DEI hire, like didn't earn it. All of this nonsense that they continue to perpetuate about our people, even when we have these degrees, like Dr. Noni in front. You don't know what we had to uh, t- to go through to get this paperwork and to demean it and diminish it when we're standing beside somebody who had 1.28 with who apparently out the I don't know, maybe AI, but or it could have been false information, but someone posted that Trump's GPA was 1.28. I am not here to disparage people because I know that sometimes the educational system is not designed for everybody to achieve. But we're talking about a white man who is running for president with a 1.2 GPA against a woman who graduated from with a Bachelor of Arts and was able to enter law school, graduate from law school, and pass the bar. Okay. This is not about liking people or preferring one or over another, but based on qualifications. Okay. So here we go with Africans and collaboration with Quakers and in collaboration with the enslaved community, making sure that Africans who were freedom seeking Africans, self emancipating Africans, knew how to get from here to Greensboro, which is about an hour away from us, to Ohio on a 500-mile journey. Um, the last thing that okay, it says only the Africans were given the codes because secrecy was mandatory, even when crossing waterways. So I thought that this was another interesting fact. So they would leave fencing boards on the side of the river. They would tell them, this is where you're going to find this. Beside this big tree, beside the rock, where the rock, you see, look to for the rocks or whatever, or the nail and the tree side. And there would be these fence boards. They would leave them the rope and the rope, and they were supposed to take 4 to 6 of these planks and tie them together to make create a raft and float down the river and across the river. Now, once they crossed the river, they had to dismantle this raft and send the pieces floating individually down the river so no one would figure out or someone we know that somebody came across the river because here is a raft. You don't even know there is a raft. How about that? Because the raft has been dismantled and the pieces are just floating down river and you don't even know what that is. And so just the attention to these details is unbelievable. So they were instructed to create rafts from fencing planks left in secret places on the banks of the river, and travelers were tied 4 to 6 planks together and swim across the river and then untie them and allow them to float individually from the river, leaving no evidence of a watercraft. And because of the level of secrecy, um, these people were able to just do amazing things. And it's unbelievable the way that these secret um I mean it was so highly secretive that 40 years, 41 years and of no discovery. And it only ended in 1860 because the Civil War was there. And it was obvious that emancipation was going to come. And it was the same thing with William Steele. William Steele did not close down his Underground Railroad up there in Philadelphia until 1860. He was like, "Oh, good, we get ready to end this, and so we don't have to keep doing this anymore." And so it's just unbelievable. I wanted to just show a few more pictures of this of the people here. So this is a picture of Halifax County, and it's explore. Oh, let me see. There you go. Explore African American heritage in Halifax County, and so the Halifax, and so that's once again the Roanoke area, Roanoke, Virginia, between Roanoke Rapids and Rocky Mount. Then you have, this is a picture of Africans traveling on the Underground Railroad from Guilford County. This is supposed to symbolize the Quakers aiding Africans on as they escaped. And then this final one is of Africans escaping, and this was local history here in North Carolina. And so, like I said, we have a lot of information, and my students here will be they're in, I think, chapter 23, 24 of their American History 1 class, which, and I think the next unit is going to be about the Underground Railroad. And so one of the things I want to do is maybe take them up to Greensboro, let them visit that area and see, what Africans were doing, how they were escaping. I mean, we don't have a lot of information here in North Carolina. It appears that folks here just tried to get to let's see, to Little Washington and places like that. But based on this information, it's very possible that people also join, because Greensboro, that's only 45 minutes from here. So there's there's a strong possibility that people also joined that trek going up north. When you consider there are a lot of Quaker communities all along that trek. It also makes me go back and think about the fact that Stagville had like 900 Africans there on that plantation in Oxford, Old Oxford. And they said that they didn't have a lot of folks escaping, but from that plantation, because it was so remote. But this information kind of brings another look at that, because we don't know, because there was so much like secrecy behind it. We don't, and then people don't want to share records about, Africans enslaving, because, make them look bad. So I would just like to even explore that a little bit more, about the connection between Guilford and the Triangle area, and some of the plantations that were here. And one more statement, they said about 100,000 Africans were part of the Underground Railroad, but it's a small number, because they really don't know exactly how many people were involved, because there are people who didn't have any help, who left by themselves and still made it. And so with that, ashe, ashe, may we continue to walk on this path of freedom with a whole what is it, with our ancestors at our back, pushing us forward. Ashe, ashe. Oh.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I know my mother.
can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Sya student.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.